कोई काबिल हो तो हम शान कही देते हैं, कोई काबिल हो तो हम शान कही देते हैं, ढूंढने वालों को दुनिया भी नहीं देते। Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're doing well. Humaira over here from Educator Academy with a new guest, with a new educationist. And today we have very energetic, passionate, and young educationist with us, Asadullah, Mr. Asadullah. Welcome, Mr. Asadullah.
Thank you.
And I would like you to introduce yourself because it's better to introduce yourself by yourself and tell us about a little bit about your qualification, your work experience, and then we'll come towards the topic.
My name is Sadullah Lakho. Currently, I'm a lecturer at Indus University, where I'm also playing the role of leading the experiential learning projects. My subject of specialization is marketing and management. My education qualification is that I have done MBA from IOBM CBM, and currently I'm pursuing my PhD degree from ICRA University in the discipline of marketing. And as far as my work experience goes, prior to the university level, I have had the honor of working at the school level, college level, and at the corporate as well. So that is all from my side. And apart from my introduction, I would like to thank you for giving me this kind of a platform. And I would like to appreciate the work your organization is doing, Educate All, because I do follow the Facebook page, and the initiative that you have single handedly carried over for the underprivileged children, it's commendable. And I really wish that it grows more, because a country like ours, where the literacy rate is at such a downfall, it really requires such initiative.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for lovely comments and for lovely wishes. And I also wish you best of luck in your life. Acha, it's a very impressive background you have. You have work experience also. Mr. Asadullah, would you like to share your topic today and just tell me the reason why you have chosen that topic?
Okay, so before I begin the presentation, I would like to tell you the topic, as you said. So basically, my experience is a blend of a school job. I've worked at a school as a teacher. I've worked at a college level as a teacher. Now I'm working at a higher education level. Apart from that, I've also worked in the corporate level, right? So I can say that I have seen all the tertiary levels of education. So this allows me to observe some aspects which, ring the bell. That, for example, a university student, I would not like to disclose the name, one of my students came to me who was struggling with several academic issues, right? So when I counseled him, because at the university we do the student counseling, we perform the role of a mentor or a guide for the student. So I found out that the student is not struggling because he is not making the efforts. He is struggling because his academic base lacks, a few essential ingredients. And these ingredients were the ingredients which the school level is supposed to cater to, right? So that is how I came to, I had the thought that what if our school level is so strong, what if our school level is so strong that every student has the right base, right? But when we talk about schooling is, gives the basic foundation to a child. But
True.
only the school's responsibility is not, it's not solely the school's responsibility to provide the basic foundation to the child. It's also the nurture, you know, and the monitoring done by parents. So these three aspects have a high impact of how the child performs in the higher education. Because if I consider that a child is a product of a school, right? So if the product is rightly furnished, then the product will excel at the further process, right? But if the product has a fault or is not rightly furnished, then the product will not be able to pass through the further process, or if even pass, we will not have the adequate the adequate level of you can say the level of what acumen that is required, right? So that
True.
is how I came to this topic. So now, if you permit me, I would like to
Yes,
share the.
sure, sure. Go ahead because you have just built up the excitement. Please go ahead.
Are the slides visible?
And not yet, please.
I have shared.
Okay, let me do it. Let me do it, please.
Okay, so
Okay.
okay. So, the topic of today's presentation is the role of nurture, schooling, and monitoring on the higher education progress of students. So, whenever we study any topic, we have to understand the basic meaning of the words used in the topic, right? So, let's begin with nurture. The definition or the dictionary definition of nurture is help or encourage the development of. Now, the development can be of a child, or can be, of like when you even you when you buy a pet animal, right, from the scratch, a baby pet animal, you are, nurturing that baby pet, you are protecting, and you are providing the food, right, and you are teaching that animal, even though that animal cannot understand your language, but it can understand the instructions given by you in a symbolic manner, right? Symbolism. Likewise, a child adopts all the things happening at the home or around the child, right? So, the second point or the second definition is care for and protect someone or something while they are growing. Now, it can be a plant. When you grow a plant, you give the plant water, you protect it from harmful, harmful bugs and stuff. And likewise, you protect a child, you care for a child, right? You feed the child, protect the child. And one more aspect of nurture, a very important aspect, is that the child grows a value system. The value system, the concepts of right and wrong, right, and the gap between right and wrong, and the moral foundation, the morals of a child, the morality of a child, that what is right, what is wrong, right, the societal norms, right. So these are all the aspects which are dependent on nurture, and
It
these are
means, sorry to interrupt you, extremely sorry. It means upbringing of a child in
uh,
simple
in a
words.
in a nutshell, you can say upbringing of a child. All these ingredients are included in the upbringing, right? So this is what nurture is, right? What in this particular presentation I mean by nurture. Schooling. A formal system of schooling means that when a child goes to school, he is being inducted into a formal system, right? By formal system, what I mean is that when you are at home, so you are, talking with the child in a very informal tone. The child has a kind of a autonomy, uski marzi, as we say in Urdu, that the
Hmm.
child knows that I can do this and I can do that. But when you introduce the child into the schooling system, then the child is introduced to a whole new formal system of education in which there are certain boundaries, certain practices. So, in the initial stage, for example, when you admit the child in the nursery or Montessori, they are focusing less on the academic burden but more on making the child habitual of coming to school, making a pleasant, making the school positioned as a pleasant experience for the child, right? Because these are the ears of a child which position the school in his mind. If, for example, if a school system is not right, if it's a system which is not favorable, if it's an inappropriate system, then what will happen if the negative perception about the school will grow in the mind of a child, and for the upcoming years the child will be reluctant to go to the school. Even if he goes to the school, he will not put the required effort, right, and that will affect his learning, right. So performance based reward system. Now, in this schooling system there is a system of reinforcement, right. And for example, an experiment was done by a scientist, right? So the scientist, what he did is that he built a maze, right? He built a small maze, like a table size maze. In that maze, he built two levers, right? And he then let a mouse into that maze. So the mouse, if the mouse pushed one lever, right, he got the electric current. If the mouse pushed the other lever, he got the cheese. So the mouse understood that if I do this behavior, it will reward me, and if I do the other behavior, opposite behavior, it will give me the punishment or the consequences. So, by this experiment, I can say that the human mind is custom to this reinforcement methods. Because if I give you the common example, just suppose that when we talk about traffic in Pakistan, right? It's a way, I'm going out of the topic a bit, but if we consider traffic in Pakistan, there are traffic laws, right? That if you come wrong on the one-way side, one-way road, then you will be penalized. If you don't wear the helmet or the seat belt, you will be penalized. These are all negative reinforcement methods, right? Just suppose that the government says that every citizen who does not have a traffic ticket for consecutive 1 year, we will award him with some small amount of money, right? Now, this is the positive reinforcement that a behavior is being encouraged. You encourage certain behavior in the household as well. You tell the child, if you do this, if you bring good grades, we will give you this gift. If you bring bad grades, then we will restrict your playtime, right? You are making the child accustomed to the consequences. Just suppose that if we take the consequences away, right, then there is nothing which restricts the child to the boundaries, you know,
True.
nothing supporting the behavior. And if we take the example of Pakistan, our country, if we talk about some practical aspects in traffic, in the like main roads like Shara Faisal, if you see, the people are
Yes.
following the traffic rules strictly because they know that the traffic police is heavily inserted there. But when we talk about the alleys or the small roads or the the internal routes, people are coming wrong, people are doing everything because they know that there is no police constable or police warden is standing there. So this is the perfect example of how behavior are reinforced, right? So the schooling
Right.
system is making the children adequate to this theory. They are subconsciously training their mind to this behavior. But when it comes to schooling, nurture also plays a major role, which I will definitely explain in the further slides, that how it is interdependent and interconnected. Please, let's move on to the next.
Okay. Monitoring.
Monitoring. Now, the word monitoring is a very complex word itself, right? It has various aspects. The first aspect is that overseeing means that you are seeing someone's behavior, actions, and the output, right? And the inputs. When we do a behavior, we are doing an input, and the consequences or the output of that behavior is the result, right? For example, if a child studies daily, the expected result is that he will get the full marks, right? But just
Right.
suppose that the child says that, okay, I'm studying daily in the home, but the parent is not monitoring that study. And in the end of the day, when the child brings a bad result, the parent is complaining to the teacher that our child has not succeeded, he studies daily at the home, it's the fault of the teacher, you are not teaching properly. But actually, the parents are not monitoring the child, that yes, maybe the child is looking at the books, right, along with the usage of mobile phone. We know that even 3 class students have mobile phone nowadays, right? So monitoring is very important, that the quality of learning
It means there was right way of monitoring. We should know how to monitor the children.
that comes after that. The first thing is that some parents don't even monitor,
Yes, that's true.
right? Some parents think that if we are paying the school fees and we have given the pens and the copies of the child, we are paying the money, that is our responsibility. But parental involvement is not, limited to this only, right? If we go to the modern teaching techniques, the unorthodox teaching pedagogy, if you Google unorthodox means not very common or typical teaching
Okay.
methodology or teaching pedagogy, you will see that a triangle is formed in which schooling, parenting, right? Schooling, parenting, and nurturing are interconnected on the edges of the triangle. That means that they go along simultaneously, right? If any one of them is at fault, then the progress is delayed or the progress is not as effective as we have expected. For example, I'll give you an example that if a child is a good, he has a good thought process, he's intelligent, and his school is also good, right? And his parents are monitoring him the right way, right? All the aspects are good, but still the child cannot focus on the studies. That brings us to another aspect which I will discuss in the next slide. But for this slide, I would like to stick that monitoring and schooling systems are interconnected, because sometimes the parents are monitoring the child vigilantly, right? They are monitoring all the activities, but they are doing everything they can, but the school system is flawed, and the basic flaws of the typical school system in majority of the schools is that first they consider overburdening the child overburdening the child with homework and learning activities as a good way of teaching the child, right? Which is wrong. Secondly, they consider that they are taking adequate fees from the parents, but they are hiring teachers who can speak good English, right? Sometimes that's the criteria, that they hire teachers who are speaking good English, but they don't know anything, they don't have any sense about the teaching methodologies or the subject, right?
True.
Or
Yes.
how to counsel the child. Like for example, I'll give you we can take the example of some schools who hire students who are studying in college level. They hire students of college level to teach the 7 and 8 secondary level classes, right? So a child goes to a teacher and he asks the teacher about the latest Indian song. Now the response of a mature teacher should be that there should be boundary between teacher and student, right? But the teacher who is an intermediate, his her or his mind is not, mature enough to understand this, to understand the consequences of giving such leverage to the students of secondary. They discuss the songs and movies, and then the student understands that we have the leverage to discuss this with the teacher, and then they become friendly with the teacher, and then from the learning part, the class is turned into a friend circle, you know and the teacher is not mature enough to understand.
It means there should always be a limit.
There
The
should also
teacher should be a teacher, no matter how friendly you are, but there should be boundaries and limits between a teacher and a student, right?
exactly, because if students don't understand this at the school level, what happens is that they go to the university level, right? And then they do same practice with the teacher there. But the Higher Education Commission has strict rules of interaction between the teacher and the students, right? There are official protocols of the interaction, that every interaction has to be recorded, and the teacher has a particular, a particular distance from the students, right? So if the students don't understand these protocols from the schooling level, they violate this protocol in the higher education also, and then they get penalized. And higher education penalization is very strict, because in a school level, if they are penalized, it is a punishment or parent teacher meeting. But at the higher education level, the penalty affects their career, because the higher education degree directs their career further, right?
So true, so true.
Anyways, I was talking that monitoring, what is the word monitoring? And the controlling system is, now when I talk about controlling system, it does not mean that you dictate the child, right? You tell the child what you want. You have to establish a control system with the child by establish certain boundaries with the child, which which accustom the child that these are your limits, these are your permissions, and these are something which is out of the limit, right? You establish the control system that okay, I am allowing you to go with friends, right? But there are certain protocols. You have to keep your phone at the on all the time, and you have to come back home before this time, before it's dark, right? These are certain protocol which are there for the school, which have to be put there for the teenage students, because we have to monitor their movement because they don't know what is good and what is bad for them, especially at the era of the internet, where students can be, or students or generally teenage children can be led astray. They can be led astray so easily that the parents cannot even know, because you cannot sit all the time there, but you can establish certain parameters there, right? For example,
Right.
there are certain applications which the parent can use to monitor the browsing of the child, what the child is browsing, right? So, this is very important because the case that I told you, that the parents don't know that what the child is doing during their study time, and then what happens, the progress suffers, and then they blame the school teachers or generally the teachers that it is your fault, right?
I would like to add, like, this is my experience also. In some of the cases, parents are like too strict. And on the other hand, if you just see, they are not ready to monitor anything. So, this is a very important factor which is nowadays being neglected, as far as my experience. Shall we move to other slide?
No, I just want to describe this one more. The
Okay.
most, so the last but the most important point is that making sure that the child is not building a rebellious attitudes towards the described system. When you provide the system, you make sure that the child is not being rebellious. Rebellious means that the child is not afraid of the consequences. The child is careless, that okay, whatever happens, I will do this behavior. But that does not mean that you have to be too strict. Actually, the root cause of the rebellious attitude is that some parents understand that they have to be too strict. You know, the parenting dynamic allows the parent to have a certain degree of control to an extent, but to an extent, word is there for a reason. To an extent means that sometimes the parents have to understand, have to go in depth that what the child is going through. Maybe if the child is not doing something you want, it's not the fault of the child alone. It's something else which is bothering him or her. So you have to be empathic sometimes. If you are not being empathic and you are just being focusing on the negative reinforcement, then the child will think that whatever I do, anyway I will get punished, right? Whatever I do, whatever I say, anyway I will get punished. So why not do this behavior anyway? The consequences will be there, right? If I do right or I do wrong, my parents will think that I'm doing wrong. So why not just do the easy thing, the wrong thing, right?
True.
So this is what the degree of control and power dynamics have to be very carefully monitored. Sometimes you have to understand the decision of the child. You have to respect the decision of the child, you know. And sometimes you have to make the child understand. Like if you are telling your decision to the child, you have to give a little justification of why you are doing this. Some parents think that we are parents, why we should give the justification, right? Because then the child knows that my parent is doing anything for a reason, right? So that is what the monitoring part is all about. Please move on.
Thank you so much. Really, we have heard this word monitoring, but you have given us a very detailed explanation and it is very fruitful for us. Thank you so much. Let's move to another slide. Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to describe higher education and higher education progress. What does it mean here? Higher
Okay.
education is the tertiary level of education. By tertiary, I mean the primary level is the school, the secondary
Mhm.
level is the high school in the foreign
Yeah.
countries like USA. But in Pakistan, we call it the college level. the intermediate level, or the A levels,
Okay.
right? So, which leads to an academic degree. So, after the A level, the university level is there, and the university level awards the academic degree. And the academic degree is the academic degree is the stamp that yes, this person is qualified to do this particular work in this field, right? And it's called post secondary education means after the secondary education in the college, the higher education comes, right?
Okay.
So the progress that a child does in this level is the higher education progress, right? So I think we should move on. Okay, so this is the framework of what I will be trying to explain in the upcoming slide. What is the gist of this whole conversation? Is that nurture, schooling, and monitoring, they collectively play a role in the higher education progress, but they are also interdependent or interconnected with each other, as the arrows represent, right? So this is what I'm going to explain in the further slide. This is the basic gist of this whole presentation. Please. Okay. So nurture and higher education. Now I'm going to. We have understood the meaning of the words nurture
Yes.
and monitoring and schooling. Now I'm going to connect all these words with the higher education, their role in the higher education. So, nurture creates a basic mindset and how the mind of a child perceives instruction and reacts to them. Nurture at home describes the behavior of a child towards the instruction at school and how the child reacts to them. I'll give you an example. In the university level, uh, I am such a teacher that I very much prefer discipline, right? I don't allow talking in between of my lecture or using the mobile phone, right? So there are categories of students who react to this instruction. Some students highlight rebellious attitude. They do talk carelessly, right? And they do use mobile phone. And when the teacher scolds them, they are very much reactive, right? And due to the reaction, the teacher tells them to go out of the class. Even then, there are two type of reactions. Some students have a degree of are found to have a degree of agreeableness. They agree with the teacher, they apologize, right? But some students just carelessly leave the class. So this shows that their reaction to authority is rebellious. But the question is this rebellious now? The answer is no. All the traits with which they have adopted while the nurture at home, I can guarantee that 99% of these children react to the instructions of parents the same way. And when they go into the organizations, into the corporate world, because at the education level, higher education level, we are training the students to go to the companies. So when they go to the companies and their boss gives them some instruction, they have a 90% chance that they will not take the instruction seriously because their mind is cognitively habitual of not following instructions. And then sometimes they will also give the answer to the boss when they are being scolded for their own mistakes. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that they don't have the ability to own their mistakes. Mistakes happen by the students, but the students own their mistakes, right? And they say apologize. But this shows their behavior, right? So if the students is showing this behavior in the higher education, definitely they will not take the instructions of the lecturer seriously and they will not give time to the study. So in my university, there are some students who are not even present in the classes. They are absent in all the majority of the classes, and they are then coming to give the midterm exam, right? This shows their lack of seriousness, right? So an effective nurturing system encourages discipline, pattern. Life has a pattern. Everything has a pattern. Even our relationships with our family. Every relationship has a kind of a pattern. Our nurture establishes these patterns. For example, it's a very small example, but when we are growing up and we are going into the family occasions, our mother says a typical sentence that I would like to tell in Urdu, that "Sajane beta jahan bhi jao, salam karna sabko." And they keep repeating it, even they know we are doing it, but they keep repeating it because this repetition makes it cognitive, makes it settle down in our muscle memory. And then we like for example, muscle memory and cognitive behavior and subconscious level. I'll give the example of nowadays that when the coronavirus came, the government introduced a new ringtone, right? Which was that coronavirus se bachne ke liye, something like that. So after a month, where we are using the phone, we are listening that ringtone again and again. After a month, we all remember that ringtone, right? Because we
Right.
are listening to it again and again, right? So cognitive learning is an enforcement of the placement or positioning of something in your mind, which is then like a pillar of your behavior and dictates your behavior, right? So leads to a successful adjustment in the higher education system. If a student is well adequate for this pattern behavior and respect for authority, some students don't respect the authority. They take the instructions very lightly. And at the end of the day, when they suffer, they give lame excuses. A student once told me that for 2 months the student was absent. And then the student came and told me that, sir, I was absent because I was doing Umrah. And I was surprised. I asked him that what is the Umrah which duration is of 2 months? Please tell me about it. I mean, I have not heard such Umrah, right? So is there a special kind of umrah where for the lifetime you are removing all your sins, future sins as well? So, anyways, now students are adept to respecting their teachers, which makes them taking the instruction seriously, right? As I already explained. So, nurture and higher education are connecting in this way. Please, schooling and higher education, right? So, I would not like to go into the slides for this one. I would just like to explain the concept that what does schooling test system give us? It gives us introduces the child to a performance based system, that if you do in a formal performance based system, that if you do this, then you will get evaluated and you will get a grade, you will get the marks. Second, it makes them adjust to a pattern, that every day at a particular time you have to come here, then a particular time you have to leave for home, and then a particular time you will take the break, right? And this behavior is being adjusted into the cognitive behavior of a child. Now, you see, some parents who encourage the child bunking the school, like in Urdu, the common language is that, हाँ बेटा कर लो आज छुट्टी कोई मसला नहीं है और इस तरह. Now, what they are doing, they are, unintentionally damaging the cognitive pattern building of the child, because the child will build the pattern when the child is introduced to the system frequently. But if you encourage the child to violate the system, then the child will not be adopted to it, right? So how it is connected to the higher education is that in the higher education there are no restrictions. If a child is being absent from the university level, the teacher does not say that beta bring the application tomorrow, or does not call the parents, right? Because the university education is expecting that the child is mature enough. So they don't do that. So when they don't do that, now what are the restraints on the child? There are no restraints. The child bunks the classes, and some universities even though have the policy that after three absences, if the child does the fourth absence, the F grade, the fail grade F grade comes automatically in the transcript, right? This is a kind of a restriction. But some child even violate this restriction because of their laziness that has been created since the school level. If since the school level they are this much lazy, then when they go into the higher education level where there are no restrictions, No one is there to tell them कि बेटा स्कूल जाओ वरना तुम्हें जो है ना मैं आज लाइक ये पनिश दूंगा. फादर जैसे कहते हैं, the father scold. The father does not scold them, right? But the child is solely responsible himself. So what is the, what is the level of responsibility that is being injected to the child is determined by the schooling that is being done, right? Because if a child is habitual of bunking the school, then at the university level there are no restraints. Then the child will go, you can say, haywire. He will do what he wants, right? And ICRA University, for example, has a policy that if in the first semester the child has bring less than 2.5 GPA, 2.5 GPA means that failed in two courses or all the courses have C grade or D grade, then the admission is not further carried, you
Okay.
know. So the child suffers. The parent that has paid the fees of the test preparation, because university level, going into the university level is not such a easy process. It requires a lot of dedication, test preparations, interviews, and form filling, documentation, and money. The money is also there. The fees is also there. So all that, effort and all that monetary financing goes into the waste, right? So the right education system makes the child habitual of the concept.
Is is there any possibility that with the passage of time, uh, children discover their drawbacks or they discover this that something is lacking? Is there any possibility? Like suppose if my child did not get a good schooling, okay, and I was unable to, there was some lacking in upbringing of my child, but now I'm able to give my child a good monitoring. So how can we fill up these gaps? Is there any possibility? Done is done, okay, done is done. Is there any possibility we can change behavior of the child? Or because as the child moves on, I agree the behavior is being developed in the child, aggression, stubborn, all these factors are because they must be lacking something at home, from the school. Maybe I did not monitor that my child properly. Is there any possibility or is there any suggestions or way out from there that when that child reaches to the higher education or when that child goes in the professional field, the behavior could be uh, changed or we can help in sorting out the behavior of the child?
All right. So here I would like to first understand your question properly. So
Mhm.
please, I understood the monitoring aspect, right? It is very rather simple. When you talk about the lake in schooling, what is that lake? Is the lake in the schooling structure, schooling curriculum? Is the lake into the discipline of the schooling? What is that particular lake that you are
Uh,
talking?
Discipline, because most of the schools are lacking in discipline.
Right.
Even the well-known reputed schools, they just go with the name only. They only have the name discipline. When you go and talk to the child, when you monitor the child, you come and go and observe the school environment, there is nothing such by the act of discipline.
I totally agree with you. So now you said that to cover the lake, right, created by the inefficient monitoring and the ineffective schooling. So at what level are you talking about covering the lake? Like there is a lake, but at what level are you talking that we start covering the lake? Are you talking about the secondary level or the higher secondary or the higher education?
See, as per my experiences, when the child grows he gets into his teens, like 14, 15, at that time we come to know about the behavior of the child. Before that, we treat him like maybe we have not monitored him properly, maybe we did not observe the schooling and all that. But after that, we discover a lot of thing about him when they are in their teens, because there's a change in their behavior also.
Okay, when they are in their
Before
teens,
getting in their universities, before getting in their college life.
right? So this this depends upon many factors, but in a nutshell, I would like to tell you that if the child is has not gone into the university level yet, I'm supposing that the child must be in the matriculation O level or A level kind of a system at that point, right? If the child is not in the university level, before the university level, the child must be in the A level or intermediate, right?
Yes.
Just to get the facts straight. So yes, the in a nutshell, the answer is yes, but with a asterisk. Asterisk means with a few conditions. That
Okay.
if the child is willing, because at
Okay.
the child is now grown up, right? And when
True.
the child
True.
is grown up, he has it's like if a stone is there besides a tree, you can move the stone, but along with the passage of time, the stone is further embedded in the earth. It is covered by soil, and the rain is doing there, which solidifies the soil. So the stone is more solidified. So now the foundation of the child is built, right? So it is, not impossible, but difficult. So the first thing is that the child realizes that yes,
Okay.
and is willing that yes, I have to change. And how will the child realize, right? The child will realize in through two or three ways. The first can be that the teacher counsels the child, right? The second is that the parent counsels the child. The third and the very rare is that the child understands himself or herself that yes, I am lacking, but that is very rare, right? That is a very rare possibility. So yes, the lake is there. So now for that, the encouragement that can be provided to the child, because whenever this kind of a change is required, this has to be encouraged, right? So the
True.
encouragement methods are that you tell the child the future consequences if he does not change his pattern or the way. And secondly, you make the child realize that his or her friends, what they are doing, and he will not be able to catch up with them. And the third and the most important thing is that in Pakistan, in our country, unfortunately, people from the basically from the middle class families are not very encouraging of the thing which I'm about to say. That is the counseling sessions, because children are also human beings. They are burdened with so many things, so many thoughts, that at a stage they need counseling. In Pakistan, counseling is not only for children; it's for adults also. But in Pakistan, there is a concept that, and counseling is, I'm not just talking about the counseling that the child goes to a teacher and the teacher just casually counsels, right? I am talking about the counseling done by a professional psychologist. And you have to be very careful in understanding that I did not use the word psychiatrist. The difference between psychiatrist and psychologist is that psychiatrist is the medical doctor who gives the medicines. Psychologist is a person who does the you know who does the changes in the behavior without medication, but through therapy. That includes discussion session, and that includes certain exercises, right, given to the child. For example, the first exercise in the counseling session given to a child who is not disciplined, it is usually that make a diary and make a to-do list of your daily activities, and make the timing that at this time I'll do this activity. And on first day, even if you do 50% of these activities, it is appreciated, because on the second day you will do 80%. On the third day or after a week, you will be habitual of following the schedule. So therapy or counseling from the psychologist is highly encouraged. But in our country, in Urdu, if I say जो word use किए जाते हैं कि वो बड़ा ये थोड़ा सा एम्बेरसमेंट है, लेकिन कहा जाता है कि साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास तो सिर्फ वो जाते हैं जो पागल हो या कोई जहनी मरीज हो। तो ऐसा नहीं है। और ये कंसेप्ट चेंज करने के लिए there are campaigns run by various organizations which provide counseling to the teenagers. But unfortunately, that is a dilemma. That is considered a taboo in our society to get counseling, right?
So true. So true.
Anyways, so schooling and higher education are deeply interconnected in this manner. So can we please go on?
Sure, sure.
Monitoring and higher education. Now, when I talk about monitoring, I am considering that schooling is being done right. I am considering that along with the schooling, the environment at home is provided righteously. It's the right environment, right? But what if you don't know what your child is doing at school with friends? What do they talk about? What are the habits being encouraged, right? When you are sending your child to a friend's home, what are the activities, right? What is the child experiencing now? Many parents say that बच्चे बड़े हो जाते हैं तो हम उनसे क्या पूछें. So the thing is that ये बच्चे बड़े की बात नहीं है. The thing is that you have to build this habit from the childhood. When your child is in one class, when the child comes at home, you ask the child. You now the most essential component that nowadays, because nowadays the due to the inflation and due to various aspects, parents are looking to earn more. So in doing that, they give less time to the child, right? So give time to your child. Ask your child what happened in the school. What did you talk about today? What happened? So when you are doing this practice daily, eventually the child will be habitual of sharing with the parents, right? And when this habit is built, the child unconsciously, subconsciously shares something which is a practice which is not right, which can harm the child. It can be harming the mental health, physical health, both, or it can be giving rise to a behavior which is not considered favorable, right? There are many things which come under this umbrella, many aspects. If we, because this is the most important aspect, most important, because if we started discussing what are the harms of improper monitoring or improper control systems, then this session can go for hours. But the harms cannot be completely discussed because many psychological theories are included in this, right? Which describe that what kind of a behavior leads to. Now, a very interesting research which is there. I don't exactly remember the name of the author, but the research tells the role of monitoring systems on the criminal behavior. When in that particular study, 100 criminals were interviewed, and they were interviewed on the basis of their nurture and schooling. And one particular trait that was found flawed, or one particular aspect that was flawed or that was not up to the mark, was their monitoring system. Sometimes the parents are too strict. The child builds rebellious attitude. Sometimes the parents are so laissez-faire. The word laissez-faire is written in the it's the word I have adopted from the Principles of Management book of Keller Kotler. This word describes a kind of a control attitude of the managers, that they are not they are very freely giving a charge to their subordinates. They are not bothering to implement their control. So there has to be a balance between the free will of the child and between the absolute control. Control cannot be absolute, and control cannot be laissez-faire. There has to be a balance, right? And when
Definitely. In everything, wherever there's a balance, it is considered to be successful. If there's no
exactly
balance, the things are going to turn the negative way. So true.
right. So let's move on to the next one. Interdependency. Now, I have told you individually the role of nurture, schooling, and monitoring, but
Okay.
interdependency of nurture, schooling, and monitoring, right? Now, we have discussed all these three things in detail, right? You see, when these circles are interacting, there is an area, a kind of a triangular area in the between, which is in the intersection of all these circles, right? So this particular area is the area which the parent needs to strike with a combination of all these aspects, all these three aspects. But practically speaking, all the things are not perfect, right? But you have to make sure that they are optimum. Optimum means minimum level of requirement, minimum level of normalization. Now, if I'm talking about monitoring, some parents are by nature, because parents are also people, they are not robots, and people have their nature. By nature, some people are temperamental, some people are too polite, some people are too strict. But when you come to the child, how you can mold your behavior according to the acceptable level is that you think before acting, you think. You know what by think, what I mean is that, for example, if you are sitting in front of your boss and your boss has said something which is not favorable, your automatic reaction is to rebel against it, to react. But you know that if you react, then it will be negative for you. So you mold your behavior, you think that भाई अगर मैं ऐसा करूंगा या करूंगी तो ऐसा होगा. तो इस तरह, when you are talking about the nurturing of your child, when the monitoring aspect comes, you have to think that भाई इस तरह अगर होगा, ठीक है, बच्चे बच्चे से इस तरह बिहेव किया जाएगा, इतना एक्सट्रीम पे जाया जाएगा, सो बच्चा नेगेटिव रिएक्ट करेगा उस पर. लेकिन अगर इतना ज़्यादा पोलाइटनेस हो जाएगी तो भी it's harmful for the child. So there has to be a kind of a balance. By balance, I don't mean 50-50. 50-50 human beings cannot achieve the perfect balance. That's why they are human. It can be 70-30, it can be 40-60, but the balance has to be there. Some kind of a balance has to be there. It cannot be 100% to a certain extreme, right? When it comes to schooling, everybody cannot afford the expensive schools, right? In some schools, there is a good environment, but the academic level, is not very high. It's acceptable. In some schools, there is neither good environment nor the academic level is very high, right? In some school, the academic level is very good, but the environment provided is not. There are cases in some of the very renowned schools of our country, right, which are named after, you can say, um, a common noun, describe a common noun which is used to describe geographical location, right? They are named after that. So in these school, an incident happened, like it's 6 years ago, that a teacher was caught selling, drugs to the students of O level and A level. So that schooling has excellent academic, right, academic structure. But what is this kind of environment, right? So there has to be a balance. What I suggest is that if in the selection of a school, you can select the school which has normal environment, not very efficient, but normal environment and normal level of academic, right? Level of academic can be normal, but the environment cannot be worst. It has to be to a normal level. Why am I saying that? Because if you are an educated parent, then you can, make the child excel through teaching him at the, if the school is teaching him the basic concept, you can further nurture these concepts at home by giving time to the child. I have seen that children from the normal schools also, like, I will take my example. I have studied from, normal middle class schools, but when I talk about my progress, I have competed with the graduates from very renowned brands, because my parents were basically educationists and educated themselves. So, nurture, schooling, and monitoring are very much interdependent, right? And the theoretical foundations and the evidence points out that all these three aspects depend on each other and are very important for the adjustment of a child into the university level or higher education level, right? So I think this is going to be all about this topic from my side. And again, I would like to thank you for welcoming me on this platform and sharing my limited exposure and experience.
I'm really impressed with the research, with the work you have given, the awareness. Although we all believe in monitoring, in schooling, and the upbringing of the children, but how they are interact with each other, and how, if any one of the factor lacks. This was really very impressive work you have done, presentation. And what I find it, I just want to share my experience, that we believe in blaming, that schooling was not done correctly. Because of that, our children behavior has been identified. Sometimes parents are blamed, and sometimes, mostly nowadays, I think monitoring factor is being lacking. I feel we are lacking in monitoring by this modernization, that now, mashallah, they are grown up, we don't need to monitor them. But you have highlighted the most important fact, that it's from the very beginning. The earlier you start, the earlier the behavior develops. The earlier you start, everything is being practiced. The more you practice, the more you are going to go towards the higher education. It was really awareness, full of awareness session, and it was very informative also.
Thank
I
you.
hope that our audience also have understood it, and they must have enjoyed your presentation, your session. Uh, Once again, thank you so much, Mr. Asadullah, for being with us. I hope you're going to join us for the next session with next interesting topic.
Definitely
And
looking forward to it. And
best of luck. Yes,
best of luck for your initiative, the Educate All Academy. And looking
thank you so
forward
much.
towards having another session with you.
And one
Thank you.
more thing, which I forget. Thank you so much for being with us, because I know your schedule. You have a very busy schedule, but you have taken time for us. So thank you so much, and we are going to look forward. Inshallah, in future, you're going to join us again with something very interesting. Best of luck for your future.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Have a nice day. Allah Hafiz. And thank you, everyone. Inshallah, very soon with another passionate, intelligent, and educationist, we'll be joining you people. Thank you so much.